Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I am Tamara Johnson-shealey, and I am back from a week-long coronavirus tour around South Georgia. Good morning. Let me see where my trusty co-host is.
Here
There
I
he is,
am.
and he has on my t-shirt.
Yeah, yeah. I
Good
thought it would.
morning.
Good morning, Tamara. Uh,
Yay.
I thought it would. Uh, it would read backwards on the screen.
It
Huh.
doesn't. No, it doesn't, David. Everybody can see it. David, it's been it was a great week on the campaign trail. Yay, that's it.
Yeah, yeah. Can
It
either
was
see my head or my T-shirt. Yes, you know.
that's okay. We see it. It was a great week, David. I went from Valdosta to Milledgeville to
Oh,
Sparta to Fort Valley to Chatham and Effingham counties. It was a great tour. I met some really wonderful people. I was safe, David. I was social distancing. I didn't get too close. As you know, I probably did. I probably got close. But I wore my mask. I wore my mask.
good, good.
But I probably got close. Sometimes I'm gonna be honest. I just can't resist a hug. I can't, and I try. I sometimes I just can't, and I won't, and I'll just hold my breath and get that good hug.
Yeah, well, that's more hugs than I've been getting. Uh,
Yeah. So let's see where Robbie is. She's gonna join us this morning. There she is.
good
Hi,
Hi,
morning.
Robbie. Good
hi.
morning.
Good morning. I'm sharing the broadcast.
You're
That's what I'm
sharing the
doing.
broadcast. You're sharing the
Yeah.
broadcast. This is exciting, Robbie. I had a great week. I know that
I
I
was
look.
listening.
Somebody told me, you look tired. I'm telling y'all, when I came back home, I slept like a log. I learned a lot about South Georgia, which I'm from South Georgia, so I know South Georgia, but just seeing it from a different perspective now as a candidate, it's like I'm seeing things that, I probably saw before, but it didn't resonate the way it does now. And just riding through these rural areas, Robbie, where all this opportunity, and that's how I see all this land where we're living on top of each other in the metro area. And I see all this land that's like saying, come here, come here. I'm like, all this opportunity that we could be just really growing
Yeah.
Georgia and doing some great things here in the state. A lot of those areas, Robbie, my cell service was horrible. My internet, my
Yeah.
phone would drop. I was talking to you a few times and I had no service. The internet service
Well,
through those areas.
you're 1,000% right, Tamara. Hey, David. We could be so prosperous as a people in Georgia, but it's the planning. It's the planning. You can't. You have to take certain steps to protect vulnerable communities first. Otherwise, they're never part of the prosperity, which
Mhm,
impacts everybody. But you're
mhm.
right. We could start. I mean, there's so much land, there's so much opportunity, there's so much diversity. I so anywho, I know we have a great lineup today.
We do, and Robert is hopping in and hopping out, but I'm sure he'll join us. I'm gonna bring Etrinda in. I think she's gonna stay with us for the whole hour. She's a community activist. Good morning, Etrinda, and she's wearing
Good
a
morning.
t-shirt.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you all doing this morning?
Great,
Doing
great.
good. Doing
Yes,
good.
she is an activist down in East Point, Georgia. East Point is one of those areas, Robbie, I'm sure you know, that people just kind of don't know a whole lot about East Point.
I love East Point. What part of I do. I love Tri-Cities. We're all South Side.
Okay. I think people know about East Point. East Point just don't get East Point is has fall below the waistline because our elected officials would not just do the things that really needs to be done for the city itself. It's not a hard city. It's not a complicated city. It's just where you have to be able to keep it polished, align inside with other things that's going on around your city, and just keep it moving forward in a very conducive, not you don't need rapid growth at East Point. You need to just make sure you keep uh, some sort of sustainability going within the city itself, if that makes any sense at this point. But yeah,
Kind of
East Point is
forgotten.
fun.
What is it? You think it's kind of forgotten? Like people are just kind of looking past East Point?
I know. I think East Point can become a dumping ground for all the wrong things if it's not handled in a more fragile way. Where when one city wants to say, well, we want this out of our city, we want things, and we've watched this happen. And I don't want to just go off the deep end with this, but where the city of Atlanta is saying, any resources that an individual needs, if you need resources, if you need something that's going to pick you up below the belt line or the bootstrap, you have to go somewhere else and get it. We don't want you coming in our city for any wraparound services. However, we can move these out. We can move the job court out. We can move the food bank out. We can move just anything that requires you to come in if you cannot afford to live in the city. You have to go somewhere else and get it, and don't come in the city of Atlanta for it. So yeah, these become those areas that we're open to development that's not conducive for the city as a whole. It makes sense in the immediate moment, but in the long term, it makes no sense. Food bank, why are we? Go ahead.
I can. No, I don't want to interrupt you. Please.
No, but I mean, when you where you look at other cities that have major sustainability, if East Point can attract the right business that's able to sustain the city, it'll be in a better position, and not just warehousing and these industries that comes in and want to just say, well, we bring in jobs. Well, you're bringing minimum wages, or you're bringing over $2 over minimum wages. However, a lot of the residents that's working these jobs are not really that they're in the community, but they're not in the community. And the salaries don't really sustain you to go out and buy something within your city. However, you can go rent something in your city, but it's just challenges. So we have to be careful of in the businesses that we're allowing to come in East Point. Where I look at College Park, College Park has revamped itself, totally revamped. However, Altropolis is there, Delta is there, the money is there, where anything College Park needs, you can go to Delta. Delta is going to make sure College Park is taken care of. Hateville is taken care of. You got Porsche, you got Woodward Academy, you got businesses and organizations that say, hey, we're in your community, we're going to take care of you. East Point has nothing. You have City of Atlanta. That's City of off the blank. I'm sorry. He's going to take care of Atlanta in a way that Atlanta don't have to worry about anybody else coming in and saying we need anything. And now you have, I think Tyler Perry is literally sitting in Atlanta. East Point, I guess East Point, Atlanta. I'm not sure which side. I want to say it's East Point, more on the Atlanta side, from my understanding. But East Point has nothing that comes in and offer longevity and sustainability that makes sense for the community. It's just it has to make sense.
So Robbie, this is your stomping ground. So what's your thoughts on this? Because I know you've been talking about this for a while.
Yeah, this kind of ties in, and I'm really grateful that there's people willing to come forward and make these statements, because really I'm cringing a bit. And let me just get down to why. So the media in Atlanta, AJC, and our City of Atlanta elected officials, and our radio stations, WSB-TV, View 103, the People Station, all that, do a very, very effective job of creating a narrative. And what you just heard from this kind, clearly thoughtful, involved community activist in East Point is a part of that narrative that they created. Arthur Blank is not the protector of Atlanta. People would like to think he is, right? People believe that based on the hype that's projected. but the wages paid out of Mercedes-Benz and the funding that facilitated that project came out of Atlanta taxpayers. We funded a billionaire stadium. We did that. And to give him the credit is only done because of the narrative that the AJC and the Supporter Report and our traditional media puts out, not independent media. And College Park has a wealth of residents, historic College Park on Rugby Avenue specifically, that fund those private schools like Woodward Academy that are $30,000 a semester. Okay, $30,000 a semester. Look at our kids at correct. Look at our kids at APS. Look what they're getting. We can't compete with $30,000 a semester, you know, education. And then you look at Hateville. So what the lady is describing, you know, for the South Side is the Southwest quadrant below 20 that's in town. And she's absolutely accurate when she says that City of Atlanta is not taking care of our own issues. And when she says that East Point, Tri-Cities, Hateville, College Park, City of South Fulton, and Southside communities will inherit the problems that Atlanta doesn't own via displacement, that's what she's talking about. She's talking about gentrification, displacement, people being priced out of City of Atlanta proper and having to go south. And Tri-Cities and South Fulton and rural Georgia, as we know, are not prepared to take in Atlanta's problems that Atlanta can't even handle. So it's incumbent on Atlanta to take care of our own, right? I'm City of Atlanta proper. It's incumbent upon our elected officials to be responsible with City of Atlanta residents, right? And not just pass them off somewhere else. And frankly, I think Tri-Cities and Southside communities should create a collaborative and force Atlanta and influence City of Atlanta elected officials to be responsible with our residents. Because the fact of the matter is, projects like the Atlanta Beltline are afforded off of low-income status communities. Those are federal funds to help low-income status residents. The fact that that project has resulted in massive displacement and massive gentrification that maligns the very residents it was supposed to aid, displacing them to the South Side, Tri-Cities, East Point, and more, who are not equipped to take these folks on. As she said, Clayton County, the airport should be a massive resource. She mentioned the world's busiest airline, Delta. That's another narrative. Again,
we're gonna come back. We're gonna come back. Yeah, we're gonna come back because I know that this is a bigger conversation. Stay with Etrinda. You gonna stay with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. We're gonna bring in Lenny and Vandy. These two remarkable people. Good morning, Lenny. Good morning, Vandy. Uh-oh. Are they frozen? I think they're frozen. Can you guys hear us? Oh, no. They are in Utah and they live in he said there's like a forest. Can you guys hear us? Uh-oh. We'll bring
their picture went away.
I know. We'll bring them back. They're going to have to log in and log.
They're upside down.
Technology, David, it's not always our friend. Maybe we'll get them to come back. Robert is coming in and out. Let's bring Robert in until they get back. Robert, good morning. Robert.
Oh, good morning.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Robert?
He may have to sign in and out again too.
Robert, sign in and sign out because we can't hear you either.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Can you hear us? Okay, let's bring Robert back. He's coming in and out too. Let's see. Vandy and Lenny and Vandy are back. Let's see. Uh-oh. Nope, they're not back. Woo-wee. All right, we'll go back to our conversation. Robbie, pick up where you left off. I'm sorry. We'll bring them back. They're frozen. So Lenny and Vandy, if you guys can hear us on the background, just log out and log back in. Robert, log out and log back in. Robbie, you were talking about Delta.
Yeah, so in essence, even the reference to Tyler Perry Studios, and I'm so grateful, you brought East Point up, because there's a lot of positives. The geographic desirability of the Southside communities is immeasurable. The proximity to the world's busiest airport is no different than London, Dubai. It is a global trend. So we have a great opportunity, but if we are not going to empower the very people that have lived through this divestment, Atlanta is not the great city that it is, and our elected officials who are pretending so are being false about it. And two great examples that she brought up that we really should mention are Tyler Perry Studios and Delta Airlines. So as most people know, and I'll be very quick, I see Robert, Tyler Perry Studios is not hiring locally. There was no community benefits agreement that was facilitated under the Reid administration and the Keisha Lance Bottoms administration. There's 300 acres outside of Oakland City that was bought below market value, that was a former military base. In the charter for public land, it's required that it assist the people of that surrounding community. That surrounding community is being displaced because Tyler Perry is not required to hire locally because they're not unionized. But that is an easy solution. And Tyler Perry buying Kroger cards, but paying for a little girl's funeral or whatever else he did does not mean living wage jobs, which is what the young lady's point was. People need living wage jobs to be able to purchase and afford a place to live, which is how they have security. So first, false narrative in the media. I'm sorry, do you want to step in?
Yes,
And then I'll go over Delta. That's corporate.
Go ahead, Etrinda.
Yeah, Bobby, I want to just butt in real quick. Before you, with Delta, I worked Delta, I retired Delta, so I kind of look at Delta in a different kind of light, not even in a bad way. However, let me go back to where you were speaking on Tyler Perry and the actual studio and the deals that took place, because I came out of the profit. I retired Delta in 2008, only to get back into what I like to do, and that's engaging in community. So I was actually working with a nonprofit. We were actually, let me tell you, you guys better, I'm telling you, when I say you get the city of Atlanta a hand, get them a big hand, because they were so eager and they figured out how to maneuver and navigate and manipulate all of the talk, all of the contracts. Councilwoman Shepherd, Kasim, I hate even put titles in front of these people's names because it was so despicable how they had all of these nonprofits running to all of these meetings when this was first going to be this thing where we're going to do Fort Mac and we're going to make sure that the community is in part of this. We want all these nonprofits to have a word in how we're going to designate and offset this land and community housing. And oh my God, the vet's supposed to be stationed somewhere over there and we're going to do the house. However, we ran to meetings like somebody was giving away cheese. We were back and forth to these meetings constantly. However, as the meetings grew longer and everything started getting spread out, and then all of a sudden you weren't invited to the meetings anymore. Well, this organization don't need to come because some people, it just became a Tyler Perry thing, literally. And we were like, what just happened here? So blindsidedness was one of the things that they were good at. They kept you eager and engaged in the beginning, and then all of a sudden you were not even invited to know what were going on. And this went on Kasim's watch. So a lot of things happened where the accountability, but we as people, and I like to say we as a whole, we as African Americans, we have to be clear and conscious on how we vote, when we vote, and who we're voting for. Because every time you go into a situation when you're voting and you're going to vote where you're voting based on the color of one's skin, that can become a problem within itself. We have these communities, we have these elected officials that's been sitting on council probably before I was born. Nothing has changed. The same, you keep voting the same way, you're going to get the same results. And there's no accountability. No one is saying, I mean, at this point, we're going to look at the NAACP calling for Erica Shields' resignation, like instantly. We want to call. However, how do you skip the head and go to the chief? How do you call for the chief to resign without holding the mayor accountable. Like, where's the accountability there? Like, we just gonna forget the head and go to the body. Like, none of that even makes sense at this point. But when you're looking at the NAACP, you're looking at where you're coming from, a national organization that's geared for color, but you don't want to hold the head accountable. Why? Why? Because it's an African American that's sitting there. I mean, where does the accountability with so many of the decisions and so many of the things that's unfolding right before our eyes, that has been unfolding for years and decades and forever, where we want to be held and we want rights in a different way, but the accountability is not there. We're not holding the right people accountable for so many things that's happening.
Well,
Your zip code 30354. I don't live in 30354. I have investment properties in 30354. I went up against, I don't know how, but I miraculously had a situation going with a water bill where my property sit, and all of a sudden I'm dealing with a councilwoman. Well, how are you involved with my water bill? How did this become something you got involved with? But now that you are involved with my water bill, you're my constituent. I'm your constituent. You need to be advocating for me. However, you're aligning yourself with code enforcement, City of Atlanta, everybody you can, to say we want to shut down this condo site. When I'm telling, when you see where it's elderly people, people who have brought their homes on them free and clear, but you're trying to figure out how to displace them, put them in a senior residence, forget the other family members who live with them where they need to go find someone. You're just have no regards for humans, period, at this point. I got a problem with you. I got to figure out a way now to bring this to everybody's attention, Joyce. So I'm picketing you. I'm paying people out my pocket. And we're going to walk along in front of your door on Metropolitan and picket you, because we need to figure out who are you working for? Is it
Joyce is working for Joyce. Miss Shepherd, Joyce Shepherd is working for Miss Shepherd. Joyce Shepherd has worked for herself for a decade.
Joyce Shepherd has spun, and I'm going to be honest with you. When we talk about keeping our local dollars in our communities, you ask Joyce Shepherd how many restaurants in 30354 that she has gone and patronized in the last 3 months, not even a year, not even 2 years. I mean, these are things that you really have to be visual about. Don't lose sight on where you're out here soliciting these votes every 4 years. However, you have no engagement in your community with your local people. Now, Tyler Perry with the gift cards, was that a Tyler Perry thing? Absolutely. However, was it a Joyce Shepherd behind the scenes? Of course that was. That was totally, one of those things where it keeps you where you have to be mindful of who we are electing to represent us. I'm very diverse. I just want the right person. I vote all Black years ago. Never ever would I do that again in the county I was in before. It was a disaster. And I didn't even research and looked at the candidates. I just figured, okay, well, either them. Yeah. And it was a disaster for me. I would never do that again. I encourage people, research these politicians, get to know something about them outside the color of their skin, get to know what they're, capable. You gotta educate yourself when you are actually exercising your vote.
Robert, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Yeah, we'll jump in a little bit. We'll come back. This is a robust conversation. I think we lost Vandy, and their internet connection was not working well at all this morning, Lenny and Vandy. But convict leasing, we and I were having, we were going to talk about that with you this morning. How have you been, Robert? And tell us about Insight Cultural Tourism.
Well,
oh Lord.
While Robert gets himself together, can I step in really quick, because I want to tie together what the I'm sorry, say your name one more time, ma'am. Etrinda from East Point was explaining. It sounds like she's had a run-in with our council person of 10 years for District 12, Joyce Shepard. It's not the first time I've heard this. We've had, Joyce has used, Ms. Shepard, Councilperson Shepard, has used agency, code enforcement, et cetera, to go after residents. She's had them arrested in court. I know people this has happened to. Oh, that was you too. Okay. It happens to the best of us. Let me tell you, it happens to the best of us. Hold it proud. So the issue is that when she says we don't have accountability, is because the structure of our systems, and Tyler Perry is a great example. What she described, the community engagement process with the NPU and the community group that was supposed to aid via the Tyler Perry city engagement, had to change their bylaws because they never had enough engagement that they had quorum. And oftentimes what happens is the people who are a part of these processes and groups or NPUs simply utilize these platforms to enrich themselves. And because our planning department does not have true oversight over the Civic Engagement Committee, the community collective always loses. And because our ethics department, when we have a problem with our elected officials, such as Ms. Shepard, does not have true oversight and autonomy, they're able to get away with it. And lastly, because our mayor needs, speaking of the head, needs these votes for council, like Shepard, she needs 8 to pass whatever legislation or budget she wants. She will leave district council people alone, like Shepard, to secure those votes. And it's known in Atlanta as the Nod Squad. So those 3 factors are all impeding progress for the collective. And the impeding progress for the collective costs all of us. All of us are paying for that in one way or another. It is very expensive. It is quadruply expensive. And hopefully Robert will be on in a minute, because Robert is very familiar with Tyler Perry Studios and the history of the West End and West End area, including some historic buildings in Tyler Perry Studios that could be used to facilitate prosperity for all. So Robert's back. He has a company. Can you hear Robert?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So we were just kind of going over some of the stuff with Tyler Perry and NPU structure. And Tamara had asked you about your company, Insight Cultural Tourism, and a project you're working on with convict leasing. If you could also go over what role convict leasing played in Georgia in terms of finances after cotton or after slavery, cotton, et cetera.
Well,
Oh no. What a warning with this internet. His internet just keeps going in and out.
Y'all just need to pay for the internet, okay? I pay ridiculous. So this, I'm just kidding. David, you want to chime in? I feel bad.
Well, I was actually going to add something to what Robert was going to say about convict leasing. About what happens to poor whites during that period of Jim Crow, but it looks like he's back, and maybe he can start it off, and then I can.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so quickly, basically, convict leasing replaced slavery. There's a very interesting book by a guy named Douglas Blockman called "Slavery by Another Name." And so the convict leasing movement was a way for the South to re-enslave people of African descent. They came out with such things called the Black Codes.
Black Codes. David, jump in. You're the resident historian. Jump in.
What do you want me to
David.
take up?
Black Codes. Go ahead.
Well, I would frame it a little differently from the way that Robert had. So he seems to be back. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm having some problems, I guess, with my connection. But the the convict labor system started right after the Civil War. It was legalized in 1866 by the Georgia State Legislature, and they basically criminalized Black life. Vagrancy was a crime. You could be arrested for not having a job. You could be arrested for not having a permission from a white a job owner for leaving your job. So there were a lot of trumped up charges, and they tried to use the convict labor system to replace the slavery system.
David, you're gonna have to jump in.
I want to emphasize that Black Reconstruction, the period of Reconstruction, which starts around 1867, was an effort by the working class, the freed people of the former Confederacy, in collaboration with these radical Republicans in Congress, to overthrow this Black Code, white supremacist replacement for slavery in that brief period of Reconstruction from 1867 to about 1877. And during that time, those Reconstruction governments broke all of these criminalization, that Robert was talking about. What happened was that the failure of Reconstruction were actually the terrorization and the defeat of Reconstruction by military and terroristic means, and the fact that the radical Republicans got pushed out, and the moderate Republicans made a deal with the Democrats to take the federal troops out of the South who were protecting the Reconstruction governments. Meant that gradually over the next dozen years, or maybe 20 years, that you create these Southern new planter class created a one-party state, the Jim Crow system, and so convict leasing became dominant once again in that period after the defeat of Reconstruction. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, because the Reconstruction governments were solidarity governments of poor whites and poor African Americans, and that it's really critical to keep in mind that there were periods in this country in which European American poor and African American poor, particularly in the South, were working together. They were voting together, and they elected these governments that were vulnerable because there were armed terrorist groups that were around that were doing the bidding of the big plantation owners and others. Convict leasing was an arm of terrorism, because just like lynching. Because if you, as Robert said, these Black codes meant that Black behavior was criminalized. If you were walking around and you couldn't prove that you were contracted as a sharecropper to a white farmer, you could be arrested for vagrancy. You could also be arrested, by the way, for being unauthorized 50 yards from a railroad track, because being on anywhere near the railroad lines meant that you could jump a train and get out of town. In other words, go north. So the convict leasing system was part of a way in which the Black community in the South, 4 or 5 million people we're talking about, more than that probably, were imprisoned in the South in this one-party terrorist state. And so there were no Republicans after the end of the 1890s, and a one-party state was absolutely critical to the maintaining this control, because Black people Black men in the South, according to the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, could vote. They had the right to vote. So the only way to stop them from voting was to through the registration process and through, the threat that if you tried to register, you would be killed. So I guess it seems to me that one of the primary reasons for this convict labor system was to preserve or to prevent Black people from moving. In other words, from moving from job to job, from place to place, out of the South to get work in other places. So immobility, or the right to mobility, to be able to move for your person, to be able to move around, was taken away. A basic human right was taken away from African Americans. At the same time, the right to vote, which still Black people were still voting in the 1870s, 1880s, and into the early 1890s, and they were voting Republican. But with a two-party system, that the temptation to go after the Black vote meant making concessions to Black people.
I'm gonna come back to you, David. I want to read her post. It says, his internet connection is a prime example of what people in Southeast Atlanta have to deal with. Now imagine everyone being online for online learning and children marked absent or not participating due to terrible internet connection. Where does the city stand on that? That is well overdue. COVID is forcing us to address issues that we've been suppressing for many years. I thought that was an excellent comment. I mean, he's in Metro Atlanta and having these kind of internet issues. I'm telling you, when I went around Southwest Georgia and South Georgia, I saw the exact same thing. My cell phone barely worked in certain areas. My internet didn't work in certain areas at all. These people have lack of the way they communicate still in a lot of South Georgia is either television, what they see on TV, or radio. That's the extent of how they are getting information. Which, like Robbie was talking about, just is manipulated. The media manipulates it. So we have a lot of work to do overall. Like, I hate that his internet keeps going in and out, but she's right. It definitely is forcing us to address a lot of issues right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If we could kind of circle back around, Robert was going to discuss that Georgia, and Robert is the owner and founder of Insight Cultural Tourism, a historic a company in West End. He's a resident of West End. He's bi-coastal. He travels also to Hampton, Virginia, which has a great historical background. But he provides historical, farm, and art tours throughout the West End. And his position is, he's a friend and colleague, so I'll take the liberty to speak for him and apologize if I get it wrong to him directly. But his position is we can sustain the Southwest Quadrant and Southside communities with cultural tourism. That tourism currently is one of the largest avenues to create prosperity in Georgia. Obviously, that's complicated now with the airport and COVID. That being said, with his historian background, he was sharing that after slavery, as David said, these Black codes were placed and convict labor was put in place, and that was a huge financial win for Georgia. It had something like some ridiculous percentage. He's currently working on a project that reviews convict leasing. But I think one factor that's really important, even after the Black codes and convict leasing, and to David's point, after this situation, we had a series of attacks on the African American community, which included redlining, the war on poverty, the war on drugs, mass incarceration, and there's a component where the unions and these this unity component separated, and it appears that white lower income Americans went into unionized jobs, whereas Black lower income Americans went into non-living wage jobs or incarceration in divested areas. And that seems to be the separation and distinct differences today. Hi, Egberto.
Hey, Berto,
Good
welcome to the
morning.
broadcast. How are you this morning?
Great seeing Tamara, David, Robbie. How you guys doing today? And I
We
don't know
are
the
great.
third person. How you
This
doing?
is
Hey, how
Etrinda.
are you? I'm
Nice to
Etrinda. How
see
you
you.
doing? Nice seeing you.
Hey, look,
I th-
it's great listening to this. I mean that's why I tune in all the time, and I just stay off and listen to all these great things about reconstruction and all of that. David, I'm gonna start calling you Professor, man. But and any
try not to get. I try to get my students not to call me that either. But
it is Professor. But I had something else to say. But when Tamara read that piece from that young lady who wrote that thing about the internet and where these internets are, that just sort of changed what I really want to say, because it's sort of it's amazing how I don't want to even necessarily call it only systemic racism, but it's even deeper than systemic racism. It's total control of the system and how they have us by, I don't want to say it in English, how they have us by the pelotas. And that means that they can really control us in so many different ways. And I kind of touched on that yesterday when I talk about they used all the isms to control us. And in this one, you have the lack of internet, you have the racism, sexism, misogyny, and all of that kind of stuff that is used to separate, concatenate where necessary, and all of that. So there was so much in that message that person that you read, Tamara, that person wrote that controls us. But on a shorter term, notice that background: national suicide, um, and that doesn't have anything to do with independent it's suicide for us. That means the country, the people in the country are committing suicide as far as what America is supposed to be. And Ali Velchi last night did a great piece on our walk towards a new kind of a country where democracy is gone and everything is fictitious. Today on the right-wing networks, they're going to be playing a program. They're going to be playing a program from a woman who is a anti-vaxxer, who is going to make claims that says this virus was created by other people to harm us. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's a half-hour video or something like that. And it is scary because, nationally speaking, we are starting to live in several alternate realities. And living in these alternate realities is really creating a space where we can do a whole lot of harm to ourselves. And as far as where it comes to people of color, we are constantly being used as the pawns. Gomer yesterday went on the House floor and started to give good reasons. And I want you guys to take a look at it if you get a chance, to ban, given that we're banning statues and taking down statues, rightfully so, of Confederates. He thinks that we maybe should also ban the Democratic Party. And if you listen to his resolution, I will find it hard for you to look at that and say, I wonder if we're going up an interesting tree right now. And that's what I really wanted to talk about today.
So tell us again why you titled it National Suicide. Go back there.
National suicide, because I think because of we Americans are a very intelligent people, but also a very gullible people. We have faith in our leaders. We have faith in our pastors. We have faith in our presidents. We have faith in the leader of the NAACP and all these other things. And it is almost like a willful dictatorship. I'm from a part of the world where we have a lot of dictatorships, but these are strong men that rule by force. In America, we submit ourselves to be led. So Donald Trump made a deal with the evangelicals. So he doesn't have to do anything right. He just have to pay the leaders to then get his will executed. And it goes like that for a lot of institutions after institutions after institutions. That is a method of willful. I mean, it's figurative, right? But it's willful death. And what is willful death? It's death that you commit on your own, suicide. And that's what I think many times as a nation, if we don't change who we look as leaderships, if we don't change who we follow, That's all we're doing, committing national suicide for most of us, as the rest, take advantage. I don't know if that made it a little clearer, but I tried.
What
Well,
about the Democratic Party being banned? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, as far as the Democratic Party, remember, and David is a professor, so David knows this much better than I do. But once the Democratic Party was the party, not once, the Democratic Party was the party of slavery. Okay, and not until the 60s and Johnson, etc., was there a change, and that change occurred where the Voter Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act and all these different laws were actually voted in with a lot of help from progressive Republicans. So it was pretty much the Republican Party allied with Johnson that really gave us the civil rights and a lot of these different laws. The Democrats then vacated the Democratic Party and ran over. They were the Dixiecrats, and David knows about this story. They were the Dixiecrats who eventually, if you take a look at Strom Thurmond and all these other guys, they then became Republicans. So in effect, what we really have is a switcheroo, right? That a lot of the racist Democrats, or I shouldn't say racist Democrats, I should say the visibly racist Democrats became the visibly racist Republicans, because we know racism goes across both parties equally.
Well, the other part of the story is that I don't think that remember LBJ was a Dixiecrat. I mean,
yes,
he's from Texas, Yes.
I
mean, he was a defender of white supremacy and Jim Crow for much of the time that he was the majority leader in the Senate, and and all of these, all of his positions.
David, I want to interrupt you and ask you a question, because and Tamara, may I? It's a quick question. Yeah, because Johnson is a complicated figure. Should we say that he was a real Dixiecrat, given his history in working in South Texas with Latinos and how he really kind of built them up, or was he just playing the role to form? I don't know. You tell me.
There's a 4-volume history by Robert Caro of biography of LBJ, and I confess that I haven't read it. I've read little excerpts and reviews, but yes, I think that Johnson was a terribly complicated character. But here's the thing: his mentor was the senator from Georgia. Oh boy, I'm blanking out on his name now. Richard Russell, Uncle Dick, right? In the 50s and into the 60s. And when Johnson was clearly committed to passing this series of civil rights legislation, he went to Richard Russell and he asked Russell to not get in the way of this deal that he was cutting with the moderate liberal Republicans, and I think Russell went along with it. Remember, Russell was part of a dynasty. I mean, all over the South, the Senate was made up of these dynastic figures. The father in the period of Jim Crow, Eastland and Russell and all of these folks were passed along their Senate seats to their sons. So you had a kind of a dynastic control of the Southern Democratic Party, and during the New Deal, they're the ones who created the white supremacist system out of the reforms of the New Deal. So in the 1950s, one of the things that happens is that the civil rights movement, which involves hundreds of thousands of African Americans in the South, and was the beginnings of a revolution, occurred at the same time as the Eisenhower administration was giving large-scale loans to Southern farmers, and by farmers I mean large landowners, to mechanize agriculture. And what that meant was that there were now machines that could pick cotton. And all of those sharecroppers who had been the mainstay of the cotton industry in the South, which was the mainstay of the economy of the South, were essentially, they were redundant. They were being pushed out. So that's the context within which the civil rights movement happened, and people in the South, Black people in the South who had been imprisoned, virtually imprisoned in the South, were now forced to leave the South. You see, and that meant that they could never achieve majority. There were 400 counties in the South that had Black majorities in 1950. There were about 50 of them or less by 1970.
David, Etrinda, did you have a question for Egberto? He's our national political correspondent. Did you have a question for him?
I did. I should have written it down because it really was so just real informative, the education and all that stuff that David was speaking on. I could sit and listen to the history all day long. So one of the things, oh God, is it Alberto was speaking on?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, about just having a lot of countries and parties and individuals being, we do find ourselves being led and listened and controlled and in some form or fashion, where even now we are saying with the country, with our president, was wear the mask, don't wear the mask, people are not listening to the mask. It's that sort of thing where you're being led or following in a direction where you have to really question and make a sound decision of what's really conducive and makes sense to self first. Because even now we're in where we have a mayor of a city who's in legal limbo with the governor. Now we're marching. We as people, we're out here marching for our rights, not wanting to be violated under any circumstances by the law and all these other things, where you are saying to me, as a mayor, you are going to be mandated. I'm issuing a mandate for you to wear a mask. If not, this is with the consequences, which is totally the mask, the purpose, what you're asking. I'm all in. I'm for it. However, you're overstepping your boundaries according to the law. You're mandating me to do something that you have no legal boundaries to do. So
Egberto, how you feel about that? Because I know Egberto probably has some thoughts.
Yeah, let me first say two quick things, right? First, I love what you had to say about being pulled from different directions, and then finally that we have to make these things, think about what's best for us, because what is best for you is generally what's also best for me, what's best for Tamara, Robbie, and David. Humanity is sort of that kind of a thing where we have most things in common, right? The plutocracy tries to tell us that we have distinct different values that we need. So we have to get over that. And what I try to do in my show, at least as well, and I know Tamara does as well, is to try to tell folks that you have to be individuals. You have to take the reign on your own and learn on your own and test what I say, test what Tamara say, test what Robbie says, test what Davey said. Now, as far as masks are concerned, it's a difficult thing because I want masks mandated, but one of the, let me, and it's not a big difference from you. I want to explain. This person told me, Egberto, you know one thing, as soon as they mandate masks, the people who, and it was proven in New York, the people who pay the penalty for not wearing the mask are people of color, because the cops are going to stop the people of color and they're going to give white people masks, which is true. We saw it happen in New York. My thing is not to put your life and my life in danger because we have a racist system. My idea, my hope is that we force those white people to do what's right, because they're infringing on your right if they're blowing on you because they have the right to do so. So it's complicated as far as who gets a fine or whatever, because a fine isn't going to stop a virus that has already gone into your nose, right? It's not going to stop that virus. So it's complicated, and for those people who say, like yourself, that, well, she doesn't have the right to mandate the masks, you may be right. I don't know the law. I'm not a lawyer. I really don't know it.
Can
But
I?
yes.
And
go ahead.
wait, let me be clear. I am definitely for the mask.
I know.
Let's be clear on that. I'm for the
That is
mask.
why. That's why I
just
said
wanna
I
make
agreed
sure
with you.
that we are clear when we are dealing with, and it goes back to you saying how you're being forced and you're led into things where we are out here every day, especially with everything that has unfolded within the last couple of months, where people are marching saying, you cannot, I'm sick of the violation of my rights.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a politician, where you bring in politics into everything that's going on in the world with this pandemic, you're saying, I think to get a city tied up in a legal limbo is where you have to pick and choose your battles. Put your personal feelings aside and just know that if I'm overstepping my boundaries, I'm not overstepping them in a way that I want to go back and forth with you on this. However, I think an appeal to the people of the city would have came a little better. Why are you threatening to find people where half of the city is receiving unemployment right now? We're in a pandemic. What are we finding you based on what?
In
Who is going
Houston,
to issue these? Who's going to enforce these? The
Courts.
You know, I think the appeal to the people, when you appeal for these votes, would have came in a better manner, because you clearly see the division that you're dealing with when you have a governor who's on one side of the fence, you're on another side of the fence, and needless to say who's right and who's wrong. We're going to lean towards now bringing this into a public arena that it doesn't have to be.
Well, and the truth of the matter is, I'm sorry, I'm going to step in. It's a distraction. You know, the Georgia Governor Kemp, you know, he's mandated that the city cannot supersede anything that a state does. It's legislation, period. Mm-hmm. So our mayor going and attempting to have a political fight in the middle of this, a lot of people are saying it's simply to get coverage for the Democrats, for her VP vote, et cetera, et cetera. And Egberto's absolutely 100% right that the people, if they were mandated, who are going to get maligned by the police, he called it a racist system. I don't think it's a racist system. I think the people in the system are behaving like racists, and we execute that through our system. That being said, the people who are going to get in trouble are people of color with less opportunity and less resources. Just like the community advocate Waikisha stated for APS, the signals, the internet. She's actually an Atlanta Public Schools advocate. Our kids don't have tablets the way rich kids do. Our kids don't have internet the way the North Side does of Atlanta. Our kids don't have the charter schools. They can't pay $30,000 a semester like Woodward private school kids. So when Egberto says that people are gullible, it's because our education system indoctrinates people and doesn't really teach them, especially poor people. To David's point and to your point in terms of corporate, I just want to tie this in because it's a perfect narrative. So I understand that you left. Go ahead.
Hold it. Let me let Egberto go. Egberto really can find him Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. This man is everywhere. Politics Done Right with EgbertoWillies.com.
Look, thank you guys so kindly for being here. Tamara, I missed you on Wednesday. It was my fault. We'll talk offline.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, Robbie, we gotta
wrap it up. Yeah. Okay. So I understand, you know, to the point of the resources. So I think the company of Delta is a perfect example. It'll tie this all in together. So Clayton County, which is right outside of Hartsfield, Jackson, are the world's busiest airport with the world's largest carrier headquartered here in Georgia, Delta. Well, who is protected there? And this brings in the point to David. People don't have the same resources, just like the APS advocate stated. Our kids don't have the same resources. And when you look at a company like Delta, who's unionized, the executives have contracts, the pilots are protected by union, and everybody below wing is not. And that is a specific tier of people. And so I think it's important to recognize just because you've had one positive experience doesn't mean that that's the way that it works for everyone there. You see billboards right now with Delta promoting civil rights, C.T. Vivian, the death of John Lewis, when everyone below wing at that airport are people of color. The people who don't have living wages, to your point, are people of color in Clayton County. Clayton County is now rated the top 10 in the country for real estate rentals. They just passed a budget for education, and they don't even have enough tax revenue. That is a direct result of the relationship the city of Atlanta and Tri-Cities has with Delta Airlines, headquartered here. That's a right-to-work state that is not unionized, that has different layers for different people. That's it.
Let me just point out that this use of the state governor's power over cities has been done over and over again. That governors, that right-wing Republican governors, have overridden or overruled the cities on things like gun control, on things like living wage, where there have been movements for living wage in cities like Atlanta, where the governors and the legislature, Republican-dominated legislature, have passed laws that say that cities can't do that. They can't pass laws in the city, municipal laws, that say that that any contractor, for instance, for the city has to pay a living wage. So it's not, the mask thing is really just one part of this whole system in which these Republicans, who were the Dixiecrats, I mean, these are the heirs of the Jim Crow Dixiecrats, have been able to quash and suppress the progressive movements that come out of the cities in the South. So you've got the party of white people, the Republicans, able to control, for the most part, the city of Atlanta and the other either black majority or black plurality cities in the state, and that's true across the South. So where the power relations are that all of these folks that you're talking about, the Bottoms and this Shepherd from the District 6 Council and
District 12. District 12.
12. Well, those folks are accommodating to the white supremacist power structure.
We're going to put a pin in it right there, David, because we're at the top of the hour. First of all, I want to thank Miss Etrinda.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, for coming on and joining us. You are welcome back to the broadcast. I know you're going to continue.
I would love to come back. Yes.
Yes, I know you're going to continue to speak truth to power, and you're going to continue to advocate for your community and in your district. Thank you for standing up and standing up for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Etrinda.
Yes, and Miss Robbie Caban, you can find her always at robbiecaban.com. You can find Mr. David Slavin right here on Facebook at Acknowledge the Divide right here on Facebook, on our Facebook page. Again, I am Tamara Johnson-shealey, and I like to use this broadcast every week to give a voice to issues, activists, and activism right here in Georgia. So thank you all for joining me, and we will see you guys next week. Another great broadcast.
Power to the people.
Take care.